Jamie Raskin thought this would be a mic drop moment.
What you're saying is that we should have Army bases named after Confederate generals or Nazi generals, people we've defeated in war. Is that right?
I'm not.
During a House hearing on how progressive ideology is impacting the military, Raskin kept twisting Matthew Lohmeier's words until the Air Force Undersecretary had enough and shut him down with a single line.
So don't bull me and say that you think you know what you're talking about. You've never served. You don't understand how this works. We care about performance in the military. Period.
And today, we're covering it all. By the way, we just launched this channel and we'll focus solely on debates. So if you believe the truth isn't partisan, hit that subscribe button and let's jump right into it.
And in any event, the Army decided that it wanted to rename military bases that had been named not after U.S. generals, but after Confederate generals who joined the Confederacy in rebellion against the Union. So like Fort Benning was renamed after a pro-Union, pro-American general. Fort Gordon was renamed as Fort Eisenhower. Fort Hill was renamed as Fort Walker. And yet, I take it this is part of the big anti-woke arraignment and indictment of the military that we have renamed military bases after pro-Union, pro-American soldiers, generals, people who've been loyal and faithful to the Union, as opposed to those who have opposed the Union and took up arms against the Union in traitorous insurrection. Now, who's politicizing this question?
This question has been a part of our discourse for the past few years. And let me tell you, the push to rename military bases or remove statues of certain historical figures has become a hallmark of cancel culture. Those calling for it argue it's history correcting itself. But that idea misses the entire point. History isn't supposed to be filtered through personal feelings. It should be recorded as it happened. Erasing parts of it doesn't bring progress. It just hides the lessons that we're supposed to learn. And as George Santayana brilliantly put it, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Now, Mr. Lohmeier made a strong case for preserving these names, arguing the importance of acknowledging their place in America's story, however uncomfortable that may be. But true to his brand, Raskin kept quick to twist his words in a poor got-you attempt.
If I understand you correctly, I'm trying to torture out an answer, but what you're saying is that we should have Army bases named after Confederate generals or Nazi generals, people we've defeated in war. Is that right?
I'm not willing to let you put words in my mouth.
We're about 2 minutes over here, so we're just going to let Mr. Lohmeier finish, and that's it.
So my point is, this is not an issue in which I've actively been involved. The renaming of bases. I wrote a book about Marxist DEI, Marxist critical race theory. That's my expertise. I have no personal issue with the fact that this gentleman to my left, who honorably served his country, has been a part of a commission to do that. I have personal opinions about why it's wrong-headed and a part of an ideological push, but this is not my issue.
You would not have renamed them, in other words?
Well, we're point of order. 2.5
that's not something I ever focused on.
All right, I think I got my answer, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back to you.
For Mr. Biggs.
You know what's ironic? In May 2021, Lohmeier became the first publicly known service member fired from the Space Force, simply because he said on a podcast that diversity training in the military is rooted in critical race theory, which is rooted in Marxism, while promoting his self-published book. So in essence, he was arguing for removing politics from the military. But just like Matthew Superior's back then, Raskin behaved similarly by ignoring the substance of what he was saying and going on a partisan attack. But then came Andy Biggs, who actually let Lohmeier speak without interruption for a change. And what he said laid his case why mixing politics and the military is never a good idea. So let's hear what he had to say.
Mr. Lohmeier, when we look at some of the things that have been said by the gentleman to your left, and I don't think I can pronounce your name. I want to pronounce it right.
Sidgley.
Mr. Sidgley, yes, thank you. And I've read your testimony. I'm interested to know your reaction to his positions with regard to the diversification of the military.
Sure.
And DEI.
Thank you. One point that the general made with which I disagree is that diversity is our strength. I don't think there's any evidence for that, but definitions matter. Words matter, and we're losing touch with this. I would reject the notion that diversity is our strength based on DEI definitions of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Skill and performance matter in the military if you'd like to deter conflict and win our nation's wars, period. As a commander in the military, I had a black colonel fly across the country to promote me to lieutenant colonel because I love the hell out of the guy and respect his views on the Federalist Papers, which he was teaching me after work hours, and because he was the best leader I've ever worked with. So don't bullshit me and say that you think you know what you're talking about. You've never served. You don't understand how this works. We care about performance in the military, period.
Exactly. The military isn't a place for ideological experiments. It's where focus, discipline, and readiness should be the priority. These are the men and women willing to risk everything to protect our country. Injecting politics into their environment doesn't just distract, it undermines what they're trained to do. Picture this. A unit preparing for deployment is spending hours on a DEI lecture instead of refining their combat skills or learning how to respond under pressure. And that's the core problem with pushing ideology in this environment. It tries to mold people into abstract frameworks instead of training them for real-world conditions. For competent leadership, the goal should be to build the most capable, unified fighting force possible, not turn basic training into a political science course, which is the point Lohmeyer expanded on and called out Raskin's flawed logic in the process.
You don't know what you're talking about. Most of the people in this room don't know what they're talking about. We need lethality in the military, period. All of the stuff you guys talk about, the men and women in uniform don't think about. They go play Call of Duty at night after they learn their mission and execute that mission, period. They don't know what you're talking about. They don't know what you're voting on. They don't care about your sexual preference. They don't care what you look like, and they don't care what the person next to them looks like, period. I'm a citizen of this country, and I can dislike you and criticize you all I want here, but our men and women in uniform cannot. And so I speak on their behalf when I say lethality matters, merit-based selection and promotions matter, and your ideology doesn't matter one bit. You ask your average military service member when Truman was the President of the United States, they can't even tell you. But my point is, they're focused on what's happened since the George Floyd riots. There are things that have happened in the last 3 years in our military that we're up here to testify about, not the things that happened 60 years ago. We're great today because of what we've done for the last half century in the fighting of the Cold War.
We all know a unit is only as strong as its weakest link. And when you apply that to the military at large, even a handful of weak links, if left untouched, can grow and compromise the entire structure. It's not just theory. We've seen this play out in real time. Let's take Russia, for example. Their top brass told Putin they'd capture Ukraine in a matter of days. They're now deep into year 3 of 3 days to capture Kiev. Why? Because corruption, poor planning, and blind loyalty replace honest assessment and strategic thinking. It's a textbook example of what happens when a military loses sight of discipline and reality. That's the risk we take when the focus shifts from capability to ideology. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on the story. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, keep thinking.